And think about when you, just as the player does, when you're thinking about committing and guaranteeing money.
So I said this. The Cowboys have not had a great draft since 2020. And if you asked, when's the last time Philadelphia had a great draft or Washington had a great draft? Last year. So I think the division has changed. Philadelphia now is stacked, and Washington has the next Lamar Jackson, the NFC version of Lamar Jackson, better in the pocket, maybe not as fast. And I think those little mistakes are not going to catch up to you as quickly in the AFC South or the NFC South. The Philadelphia Eagles and now Jaden Daniels, you're going to see all these mistakes start adding up. But they haven't drafted well. They've been a non-factor in free agency. Couldn't afford Derrick Henry for $8 million. How do the Eagles afford Saquon Barkley? They're paying everybody. So again, this feels like they let Dan Quinn go to the rival Commanders. This feels like they've just played this out longer and longer and longer. And I said this a couple weeks ago. I would have thought about last year moving Micah and getting more draft capital, but I don't know if I trust the Cowboys to draft the right players if they got the draft capital. But I want to shift it. We're going to bring in Nick Wright. Haven't talked to him in a while.
Well, I want to talk about Dallas Cowboys. I don't want to shift it, so let's talk Cowboys. So I don't think it's entirely fair to say that they haven't had they haven't had good drafts over these recent years. I mean, they drafted Micah Parsons. That's a pretty good draft pick. And they built teams. Now, listen, I'm definitely on the record saying that those 12-win seasons weren't as big and grandiose as Cowboys fans wanted to make them out to be. And I still very much stand by that. But they still clearly built teams that were good enough to win a fair amount of games over these years. Like that obviously can't be disputed. And I again, I'm one of the first people to point out, like, they definitely always played significantly better against the worst teams. And when it was time to go up against the great teams, it was always kind of like, you don't seem like you're there. Like, even when the Cowboys are winning 12 games and they're, competing for first place and winning the division, like, you're never like, this is like the Buffalo Bills. This is the Baltimore Ravens. This is the Kansas City Chiefs. Like, I never felt that way. This is the 49ers. And to trigger Cowboys fans, sorry, it's like, this isn't the Philadelphia Eagles. And that was kind of the difference, right? Philadelphia Eagles in 22 were praised relatively as much as you could be from Philadelphia. But then when it was time to compete, when it was time to perform, they did. Especially, obviously, in the playoffs. And especially, obviously, even in the Super Bowl. Even though they lost, they still showed up. And then, of course, in 24, they showed up. And then that's where when the rug really gets pulled under from Dallas. And so I don't think that's fully fair. But here's the thing. I think what's probably a better thing to say when Colin's saying, like, oh, you'll pay for those mistakes. I think it's more that any of the leaks that you have, any of the weaknesses that you have, and any sense of what I always refer to as fool's gold for any of these teams, when a team seems to be better than they really are, which I think 23 would be a good example of that. One of the big selling points for the Cowboys was like, oh, we beat the Eagles, and it's like, well, you guys like dominated the Eagles that second game, and my whole thing was like, well, the Eagles weren't really that good that year. I mean, you had the Seattle Seahawks with the backup quarterback beat them. You had the New York Giants, like Jimmy Cutlets, I think it was, beat them. Like, beating the Eagles is not that impressive. I know they were in the Super Bowl last year, but like, that's not the Super Bowl team of 22. So, and I think when you have some of that fool's gold, where the NFL is right now, you don't even have to just focus just on the division. I just think there's enough truly great teams that you will find out. You do get, I don't like to use the word exposed because I think that's an overused word in a lot of times, but it's like, you do get exposed, you get found out. And that's what happens more with the Dallas Cowboys. And I think what comes down to it is the Cowboys right now lack the ability to make that extra move, that next thing. They can build the foundation, and I call out their culture, I call out how they conduct business, and I call that all out, and I think it's accurate. That's why I say it. But they still do have a foundation. it's loud, it's messy. I don't love it, but like they do have that foundation, but they lack that move. When you have a pretty good team like the Rams had in 21 and they're like, we need OBJ, we need Von Miller. Like I always reference that. It's like we need this extra, we need this. You know, the Kansas City Chiefs even, I mean, it didn't bring it all home for them, but they were like, we need, and they get out and get DeAndre Hopkins. Right? The Baltimore Ravens are like, we need Derrick Henry. Made that offense just, I mean, truly just breathless, right? The Philadelphia Eagles getting Saquon Barkley. And now maybe you're going to say that with who they got from the Steelers and, you know, with Pickens and stuff. Maybe. But it's just like, now you have a new coaching staff. And I do think Eberflus was a good hire. I really do. But like, what's that next thing? And even if they're a pretty good team this year and they're on track to win 11, 12 wins, it's like, do you trust them that mid-season? Like they'll make that next move to like really get them over the hump or even the following season. It's just like they never do that. They never do that. And that to me is probably what holds them back more than anything, where it's like they don't quite do that next thing. They never quite pull a fast one on another team or really just like make a move in the draft where you're like, my goodness, how did they pull that off? Or in the middle of the season, they go out and get someone and you're just like, whoa. And again, maybe it'll be with the trade with Pittsburgh Steelers. Maybe that will be it. And this offense is just hitting the ground running. I guess it's possible. But then it's being led by a first-year head coach who I personally don't have a lot of confidence in. And it's just like, I would have been more open if it was Mike McCarthy, actually. I would have been higher on it if you had the continuity with Mike McCarthy. You hired Eberflus, and I would have been, you know, fine with that, actually. I probably would have been a lot more optimistic. But also Dak coming off an injury. So I don't know. But, you know, like the question which Colin didn't really answer here about will this be an issue for Dallas, you know, in terms of Jerry Jones and the conversation. And I credit Micah for still showing up and stuff. I've used this example for a lot of the players who have decided to like not show up when they're trying to negotiate. I always say, like, I understand. I don't blame you for like not practicing or not doing those things because of, I guess, like theoretically like the risk of an injury and whatnot. But like, I am always a firm believer in at least showing up, showing that you want to be there, proving that you want to be a leader, that like, listen, I'm frustrated with how this is going. I want to get paid, but I want to be here. It's important. Like, you know, I think that's always the way, pretty much always the way to go. And so I do think that's impressive and the right way to go about it. But like, you know, this stuff does matter. There's definitely two different camps where some people think these types of things don't matter and other people do. I'm a firm believer that this stuff does matter. These players are not machines. They're real human beings. All of this stuff is distractions. Like it's just all extra noise. And it's easy to think like, oh, all these guys, all they have to really do is focus about football, all this other stuff. Like, does it really matter at the end of the day when it's Sunday and you're playing, it's, you know, it's Sunday night football, whatever it is, like, does it really matter? And it's just like, in a way, yeah. Like these guys are such finely tuned, like as much as I just said that they're not machines. On the other side, it's like they're such finely tuned machines that like you need to really do everything you can to create the perfect causes and conditions to get the maximum out of them. And when you deviate from that, you just don't quite get it. And I actually used to date a professional ballet dancer, and their coach or instructor, whatever it's called, I don't really know. They would always say, you know, you miss just one day and you are significantly behind now, that you have to keep performing at this high level again and again and again. It's like, if you miss just even like a day or two, you're a couple weeks behind now. And I used to push back on that. I used to be like, no, that's not true. But when you're talking about high performance, it really is. I mean, it really is. That any disruption can really cause you to just go like this. And when you're talking about such fine margins, especially in the NFL, something like this really kind of starts to look like this. And even if it still is just like this, it's the difference between winning and losing. And if you just keep doing this, you just get further and further away from losing. And so it's just like any of these little things, I really see it as cumulative. And it's just always something with Dallas. It's just always something. Always something. And I do think it's an issue for Dallas, and I do think it all catches up, and I do think it gets messy. And you just don't want to see it. And kind of like Nick Wright said, where it's just like you do this whole song and dance only to then ultimately pay Micah exactly the amount of money that everyone thought he was going to get in the first place. And it's just like, right, and round and round and round we go. And so it just becomes a mess. Those are just my thoughts. I'd absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys all think about the Dallas Cowboys and Micah Parsons? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single comment, so whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get in some discussions, let's get in some fights, but ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We are building an amazing community here, and absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to, something that we're really excited to be part of. I think we're well on our way to doing it. Please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much. See you next time.